Hey, it's Don, the Auction Professor here, and as the title says, things are changing drastically in the reseller market, especially for thrift stores and especially for pricing and clothing. Clothing overall, retail, brand new clothing right this minute has been in a steady decline. Many large companies these days are having massive issues with selling their clothing. They've got a ton of inventory that just isn't selling, into the billions in many companies and many stores. Further eroding the price of clothing are other markets like Poshmark and eBay, and even Amazon and Walmart as well too, because they're selling cheaper clothing that's brand new. And thinking about the prices, as the prices are falling, what's happening in the thrift stores is the prices are rising. So you've got retail prices falling across the board, across most categories of clothing. And at the same time, you've got the price that you have to buy used clothing going up higher. So there's not much of a gap anymore between buying new and buying used. And it's getting worse every single year. This is the worst it's been for a drop-off for clothing and books from what I personally see, and I've heard from many sellers who have sold for year after year those specific types of items. So the market's getting worse. At least on eBay, I can tell you for sure. Yes, Poshmark and things like that still are selling clothing for a decent rate for what does sell. But of course, Poshmark's a smaller site. It doesn't have a big market share. Bringing this up today because I just got back from 4 thrift stores. Out of those 4 thrift stores, I found 0 items that were really worth my time and effort. There was a few pieces of clothing that I might have been able to turn for 10 or 15 bucks. Doesn't excite me, not worth my time. I've got much better items than that I can sell that I already have. So price-wise at the thrift stores today, a junky t-shirt's $5 these days. I can go and actually get a brand new t-shirt for $8 or $9 at the mall. Again, the prices at the thrift stores were horrendously high. Most of the good items were filtered out before they even got in front of me. Many thrift stores are struggling right now as well and have closed down many locations. Savers in our town, 2 big Savers, full-size Savers, shut down at the very same time. And that's with donated goods. That's free goods that they get that they still can't keep it running. Goodwill is having similar issues. They're auctioning off more items because there's less involved with selling the items in the store. It's a higher turnaround and a higher profit for them. They're sending still more items to high-end resale shops as well, to a high-end Goodwill and things like that. They're scanning now books as well as CDs, sometimes in tapes and cassettes and other items just like that. They're pulling off the expensive shoes. They're doing all these other branches and things that can increase their profit. But what, of course, that's doing is making less stuff available for you and I at these places. I don't do thrift stores too much in my area because thrift stores are a dying breed in my area. Once Savers shut down, the market's been dying. Goodwill's been scanning. They're doing their own auctions. Salvation Army, same similar issues. You got to go out farther and farther to get to thrift stores, and then they still aren't that good. It's a couple items at a thrift store. I cannot make a living on a couple items at a thrift store. It's just not possible. I do the other options that I do, but again, this is the trend that's going. It is going to get much worse and not better. There is no coming back from this way where it's going to change because retails are fully caught on. They're fully going after the market. There's so many articles talking about this on mainstream news. So many new sites have popped into the market selling used clothing. It's now a kitschy, trendy thing now. So again, it's killing the market across the board for clothing. So you can't center in on one site. You can't center in on one item. For the most part, 99% of people will not make it on one item or one site because of what is going on with the market. So take that into consideration. I'm going to show you some news articles right now, and you can see it for yourself. Research it yourself. All the studies, all the reports show this. It's across the board, and that is what's going on. The gap between used and new is dying. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. That's why it's so essential to do something else as well, and to broaden your reach. At least broaden your sites you sell in so you have more opportunities to sell that same item. If you can't get more items, you're going to have to start finding different items. You're going to have to. There's no other way. Start retail. Start something else. Start wholesale. There's no other way that this is going to keep on going, and you're still going to survive if you're only selling used clothing from thrift stores. Even if you have garage sales, that's only part of the year in most of the country. So, you know, if you can live on sourcing half the year, more power to you. But even I can't source half the year and never source the rest. But let's go look at some articles on it right this moment. So here we are. This is the first article. This is from a few years ago when it started to get bad and when things started to switch over. This isn't a new trend. This has been going on for several years, if you haven't realized that. Prices have been steadily increasing at thrift stores, while retail has steadily been decreasing. Customers are no longer willing to pay full price for clothing. That is in 2016. It has gotten much worse in that same aspect of it. Go to the mall one day. Look at some of the online sites. The cheapest prices are online. The cheapest prices are discounted items, imports, and things like that. Every single major site that sells clothing online has a huge discount section. In some cases, they're actually ordering clothes of lesser quality so they can straight send them to a discount category right off the bat. It's just the way they are. You can look up that information. It's a known thing. They sell a lot of seconds. They sell a lot of other things like that. Again, this is the trend that's going on. So they're getting cheaper clothing. They're ordering it cheaper intentionally. They're putting it straight to discount. This is 2016. Now, I'm just going to show you the title. You can come back and trace down the article from the title if you're really interested. That's the trend then at the end of 2016. Let's look at a few more articles here just to show you again. Here's another one. This is from November 14th, 2018. This is fourth quarter when everything should be going up, when sales of clothing should be skyrocketing. That's not the case. Whether overall sales were up for fourth quarter is not the issue here. It's the majority of items at thrift stores are clothing. The majority. If they can't make the money on clothing, that runs the store. So if clothing dies for a thrift store, the thrift store is not going to be in business. They are going to have to raise the price. It is still cheaper to buy at a thrift store than it is to buy new. But as I said, the gap is getting smaller. And as the gap gets smaller and smaller, the companies are realizing they're losing all this money, which they do know right now. They're looking into these issues. They know what's going on in their store. We're going to show you a few examples as well. But again, inflation steady as food and clothing prices drop. This is fourth quarter, folks. Fourth quarter. This is not a slow season in the middle of summer. This is fourth quarter, November 14th, mind you. So take that into thought. This is what's going on. This is the trends. I'm not saying it's dead. I'm not saying it's going to be over, but you got to broaden your horizon. It's the only way to succeed at this type of business these days. I've been in this business for a long time. Things change all the time, and they're drastically changing, more so in the last 2 or 3 years than any other time in the history of reselling for 20 plus years of reselling online that I know. Partially because of Amazon, partially because of thrift store prices, and then clothing. Clothing runs the markets in the thrift store industry. You see that, you know that. The majority of items in a store, a thrift store, are clothing. So if clothing's changing and dropping and the market trends are going the way they are, it's not going to be a viable market for most of you to sell in. You better start looking for other stuff. So let's look at it, just a couple more here. Next one is the John Lewis chain. Sales rebound as it cuts clothing prices. Clothing prices are going down across the board. This is from December 2018, the biggest time frame of fourth quarter when most stuff sells. Right before Christmas, they had a big boost, but again, they lowered the prices, so their overall return on their investment is down. So what I'm saying to you as well is that gap between thrift store price and new price is getting smaller and smaller. So more and more people will be more interested in buying brand new clothing that has never been worn for $2, $3, $4, $5, $10 more than buying them used. So again, and if you watch some of these other, like the ASOS and Bond March and some of these other companies, profits are going down. So they're projecting less profits in the areas of clothing across the board. So this is just another example. Let's look at a big one here. H&M, as we all know, big company. Most people have messed with H&M clothing as well. The title from New York Times, major newspaper. This is a major article done by well-trained writers and investigators. A fashion giant has a problem. $4.3 billion in unsold clothing. What does that mean? It's going to secondhand sellers. It's going on discount. It's going on clearance, further eroding this. This is a huge company. This is monstrous size company. It's not the only one. If you do some quick searches, you're going to find stuff like this across the board. Let's just pop to one more. Inflation unchanged as lower food and clothing prices offset energy hikes. So this isn't exactly addressing reselling. It's talking about inflation. It's talking about what the entire market is doing. Clothing is a huge section of the actual markets. So if clothing goes down and things like that, it can hurt the actual economy in many ways. So this is what's going on. Inflation-wise, you might see it stagnant because one thing's going down and one thing's going up, like energy costs are going up, but clothing's going down. Overall, it might be good, but for those of us that are selling it here, that do clothing or dealing in these areas, that are reselling, that's where it's hurting you. This is an overall trend. This isn't something odd. This has been going on for a long time. So, again, this is an urgent call out for you to do something about it now before next year when it's even worse. Again, the actual slowdown, many people that are selling clothing and used stuff and new households and things like that are seeing a bigger slowdown this year sooner than it was last year. And last year it was sooner than the year before. So that's the takeaways on this. So hopefully you act on this right now because it is an urgent issue for you before it gets worse. Well, there you go. That's the hot topic of the day. That's the urgent message. You better start reaching more people. You better start finding new items to sell. You better broaden your horizon in what you search for. So hopefully that gave you some ideas and some thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button down below. You can also hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content or go live. Subscribe and tell a friend.